Hey guys, tonight we saddle up for a strangely fragrant journey through Imperial China, where a courier's satchel didn't just carry scrolls and wax seals, but something far more curious, a small glass vial of perfume. You're riding beneath a Tang Dynasty sky, stars fading as the first streaks of pale orange stretch across the eastern hills. The saddle beneath you creaks quietly with every step your horse takes, and there's a surprising chill in the air for late spring. Your cloak flutters behind you, stiff from yesterday's sweat and dust, but your boots are warm and snug. The rhythmic clop of hooves is the only sound for miles, apart from an occasional trill of early birds and the hushed shuffle of leaves. There's something serene, even hypnotic, about this morning. And don't worry, despite the occasional whispers about highway robbers or scheming eunuchs, you're probably not going to be ambushed before breakfast. Probably. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is over there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift in your saddle, adjusting your weight as the narrow path dips downhill. The horse exhales in a wet snort, shaking its mane as if to say, "Again with this road?" A fox darts across the trail up ahead, barely more than a shadow. In the pouch at your hip, 3 tightly wound letters sealed with a wax impression of the Ministry of Rights. You are not to read them, you've promised. Sworn it before 2 officials, a monk and a particularly grumpy magistrate. Of course, whether or not people keep those promises is another matter. Still, it's not the scrolls that have your attention this morning. It's that faint, unplaceable smell, like crushed herbs and wood smoke and maybe even something floral. You lean down to sniff the flap of your saddlebag just to make sure you're not imagining things. Nope, it's real, it's there. That same smell you've caught drifting from the halls of post stations and inner courtyards lately. Faint, but purposeful. It's not an accident. The terrain flattens and you pass a grove of peach trees in bloom. The petals haven't fallen yet, and the blossoms cluster like pink clouds against the branches. But no, that's not what you're smelling either. You reach down and untie the smaller inner pouch. Inside, a narrow vial, stoppered with wax and wound in silk. You don't remember packing it. You hold it up to the light. The liquid inside shifts like pale amber syrup. You give it the tiniest uncorking and immediately regret it. The scent blooms upward in a rush, heady, sweet, warm, and oddly peppery. You scramble to reseal it before your horse starts sneezing. It's a lovely smell. But you weren't told to carry it. No one said anything about fragrance. Just 3 letters, 2 mounts, 40 li a day. That was it. Historians still argue whether every courier was issued perfume or only those on certain missions. Some say it was a quiet sign of rank, like a silk trim on your robe or gold in your bootlace. Others claim it helped the scrolls blend in, imperial letters that smelled like home, like the emperor's own chambers. And then there are the oddballs who think the perfume was a weapon. That's right. A tool for confusion, distraction, maybe even seduction. We'll get to them later. Your horse stumbles slightly on a rock, and you clutch the reins tighter. This is your 3rd month on this route. You know the landmarks by now. The crooked pine that looks like it's always halfway into a bough, the shrine with a fox statue missing an ear, and that weird patch of grass that smells like boiled eggs when it rains. The Imperial Road is a living thing. It has moods, personalities. Some stretches welcome you, others drag at your feet and whisper rumors. You pass a milestone marker. The inscription is almost worn away, but you know what it once said, Route of Fragrance. It was meant to describe the tea shipments from the south, but someone once joked it now refers to you. A pair of farmers wave from a nearby field, then immediately wrinkle their noses. You wave back and consider whether it's you or the horse they're reacting to. Probably both. You'll stop to rinse off later, or not, depends on how generous the next postmaster is feeling. By midday, the heat's crept up your back and settled into your shoulders. The saddle's harder than it was this morning, or maybe you're just getting more aware of it. You stretch, pop your neck, and glance at the vial again. This time you don't open it, you just hold it. The glass is smooth and faintly warm from your skin. Somewhere behind it lies a network of reasons, political, spiritual, maybe even romantic, that led someone to tuck it into your gear. One mainstream historical fact is this. The Tang postal system was astonishingly advanced. Relay stations every 30-40 kilometers, fresh horses, lodging, coordinated schedules, messages crossed entire provinces faster than most people could walk to the market. Couriers were trained, tested, and occasionally, if they were very lucky, honored. And yet, no one can quite explain the perfume. A quirky tidbit? Well, there's a Tang poem about a man who followed his lost love's scent from station to station across 5 prefectures, believing the road itself was haunted by her perfume. The ending's ambiguous. He either finds peace in a garden of osmanthus or walks straight into the sea. You tuck the vial away and give your horse a gentle nudge. The next relay isn't far now. You'll swap mounts, maybe get a bowl of radish soup if the cook's in a good mood. And with luck, you might even learn who else is carrying perfume these days, and whether they've figured out why. The road curves gently to the left, leading you through a shaded patch of pine and cedar. The sunlight dapples through the needles above, flickering across your robe like restless fish in shallow water. Your horse slows slightly, less from fatigue, more from intuition. Animals sense things before you do. That bend up ahead might mean a fallen tree or a snake sunning itself across the path. Or if you're lucky, it's just a post station with a half-decent bench and warm tea. Either way, you keep your hand close to the reins and your mind drifting back to the vial. You pull into the relay station just as a sleepy attendant finishes scraping burnt rice off the inside of a pot. The scent of toasted grain mingles with the sweet edge of fermented plum. He doesn't look up until you clear your throat. Then, with the efficiency of a man who's done this 1,000 times, he steps aside to let you through. The place smells like ink and old smoke, comforting in a way that only places with history can be. You tether your horse under the awning and exchange it for a fresh mount. This one's younger, leaner, slightly more opinionated. The station master hands you a small packet of dried jujube and salted radish. You nod politely. No words exchanged. Couriers aren't supposed to linger. But just as you're about to swing back into the saddle, he leans in close and says, "It's sandalwood and agarwood. Yours smells expensive." You freeze. He nods toward your saddlebag, where the faint aroma's already begun to creep out again. I used to carry the same route. They only gave that blend to high-security runners. Usually when the emperor didn't want the letter open, he shrugs, or when he did, but not by the intended recipient. You blink. "So which is it?" He grins, toothy and crooked. Historians still argue whether the perfume was a signal or a misdirection. Either way, don't drop it. Back on the road, you let that idea settle into your spine. What if this scent isn't just luxury or disguise, but a code? Maybe the recipient will know what the fragrance means even before breaking the seal. Maybe the message is embedded in the scent itself. The thought makes your pulse skip. A few miles on, the path forks, and you take the eastern trail toward the hills. Here, the air sharpens. Cooler, resinous. You pass a patch of wild ginger, its roots exposed like gnarled fingers. A few petals cling to a crumbling shrine off the trail, probably left by a traveler in need of luck or forgiveness. You consider leaving something too, a coin, a word. The vial? You don't. You keep riding. In the Tang Dynasty, smell wasn't just sensation, it was status. One mainstream historical fact, members of the upper court were categorized not only by title or land, but by signature fragrance. It was said you could identify a chancellor by his trail of clove and cassia, or recognize a favored concubine by the orchid oil she left behind on lacquered screens. Scent was both ornament and language. Now imagine being odorless, no scent at all. That wasn't discretion, it was suspicion. Fragrance meant you had nothing to hide, or at least that you had taste. Officials who smelled like plain starch and paper glue were sometimes treated worse than those who reeked of deer musk and ambition. A whisper followed them. What are they covering up? Some documents even included instructions for fragrance. One courier handbook reportedly contained a chart. Summer roots called for rose and vetiver to cool the body, while winter letters were paired with warming tones of cinnamon, benzoin, or safflower oil. Whether this was really enforced or just imperial eccentricity depends on which historian you believe. But either way, it's very hard to argue with a nose. A quirky tidbit from a side scroll? The emperor once sent a marriage rejection to a distant princess. The letter was scented with something called lonely lily, a custom blend meant to soften the insult. Unfortunately, the perfumer used the wrong vial, and the letter arrived reeking of sweat and garlic. A diplomatic incident followed. 2 provinces stopped speaking to each other for nearly a year. As your horse trots uphill, you pull your scarf tighter around your mouth. Dust swirls with each gust of wind, mingling with wood smoke from a distant hearth. The scent in your bag persists, faint but stubborn. You wonder if the recipient of your message will recognize it, or worse, if they'll misrecognize it. Up ahead, a figure on horseback appears, trailing a thin cloud of reddish dust. Another courier. You both slow as you pass, nodding politely. Their saddle is marked with the emblem of the southern court, pear blossom and wave lines. You don't know them, but you catch the scent as they pass. Bitter orange and camphor, practical, disguising, maybe even a little sad. It's a quiet world, this one you ride through. But the air is never truly silent. Smells drift like gossip. Some honest. Some layered. Some too deliberate to be anything but a message. And maybe that's what this is all about. The perfume isn't for decoration. It's not for comfort or beauty. It's a voice. And like any voice, it says what it's told, but it also reveals without permission. You glance once more at your saddlebag, then onward. The hills rise around you like folded arms, the trees thicken, and somewhere far away something that smells faintly of orange blossom waits. Your new horse is eager, probably too eager. Its hooves strike the hard-packed trail with the energy of someone who doesn't realize they'll be running for hours. You lean forward slightly in the saddle, not to urge it on, but to keep balance as it breaks into a trot. The landscape changes as you climb. Cypress trees now outnumber the peach, and the wind picks up a peculiar edge, like paper and mint and something faintly metallic. You catch yourself sniffing the air without realizing it. It's become a reflex. You know how it goes. Once you start noticing smells out here, you can't stop. Every grove, every shrine, every traveller and mule carries its own ghost cloud of scent. Sometimes it's something obvious, boiled chestnuts, sweat, tar. Other times it's more layered, old incense that's soaked into someone's robe, camphor from a medicine pouch, or perfume, like the one in your bag that announces itself before a single word is spoken. You pause to drink at a shallow creek. The water is cold and full of leaves, and it smells like green tea and moss and old coins. You wonder what the emperor's water smells like. Probably jasmine or ginseng filtered through 3 kinds of porcelain and passed by 5 attendants in matching slippers. Meanwhile, you're splashing stream water onto your face while kneeling beside a rock shaped like a teacup. Still, there's something oddly pleasant about this moment. You lean back on your heels, hands dripping, and breathe deeply. Even here, in the middle of nowhere, the scent from your saddlebag reaches you, sandalwood definitely, and something floral that still eludes you. Peony? Osmanthus? Maybe it's just the glue they used to seal the bottle? You remember a story you heard back at the main relay station, that the emperor once received a blank letter. No ink, no writing, no symbols, just a scroll soaked in a specific scent, said to be the signature of a certain poet-assassin. The message was clear without a single word: I'm back. Historians still argue whether that story is apocryphal or simply dramatized, but one thing is certain: messages didn't always need ink. Sometimes smell was enough. Your horse shifts nervously. You glance ahead. A cart is stalled up the road, its wheels sunk into a muddy rut. A woman is struggling to free it, and an older man stands behind, scratching his head with a willow switch. You approach slowly, lifting one hand in greeting. Need help? The woman looks up, flushed with effort. Unless you're carrying a second cartwheel in that fancy robe, I doubt it. You laugh. No wheel, just 3 letters and a bottle of perfume no one will explain to me. At that, the man chuckles. Then you were a courier. We were just talking about that. Back in my day, messengers smelled like horses and rain. Now you lot smell like flower gardens. You grin. I didn't pack it. It was included. He narrows his eyes. Might mean someone's trying to keep you safe. Or trying to make me more interesting, you offer, hopping down from the saddle and helping to lift the rear of the cart while the woman guides the wheel. With a loud squelch, it pops free. Mud spatters your boots. The scent in your bag, now a little jostled, wafts out stronger than before. The man steps back and sniffs. That's not flower water, he mutters. That's phoenix balm. Excuse me? A rare blend, used to be made by a nun's order in the Western Mountains. 1 drop could mask the scent of death, or, if you were clever, it could signal exactly who to trust. You glance at the woman, who's suddenly looking at you like maybe you're not just a smelly courier. You nod, thank them both, and ride on. The idea sticks with you, perfume as a passport, as a secret handshake, or as a lie. One mainstream historical fact: during the High Tang period, some members of the imperial court had their own registered scents. Not trademarks exactly, but records of ingredients and proportions filed in the Ministry of Fragrance, which was an actual department under the Bureau of Etiquette. Only nobles were allowed to commission these formulas, and using someone else's was considered an act of impersonation. That's right, wearing the wrong perfume could get you arrested, or worse, promoted. A quirky little example. There was a court official who wore a scent called Thunder Orchid. Supposedly it made people too afraid to lie in his presence. The reality? It just made them sneeze uncontrollably. Your route bends again, and the hills open into a narrow valley laced with plum trees. Their blossoms have begun to fall, and the air is thick with sweetness and decay. You find yourself layering smells in your mind. The natural scent of the trees, the faint herbal trace of your tea pouch, the sharper tinge from the courier badge on your sash, which was rubbed with oil to preserve the wood. Then, above it all, that vial, that message, still unopened. You know what's strange? You've come to associate it with safety, even though you don't understand it, even though no one has properly explained it. It's been with you through rains, thieves, arguments, and now muddy carts. You start to think of it less as perfume and more like a companion. It's weird, right? You're halfway through the province carrying imperial secrets, and the most consistent thing you trust is a bottle of scent you didn't ask for. You reach a flat stretch of road where the trees fall away, and the wind picks up again. It carries the scent of something burning in the distance, probably farmers clearing a field, but underneath that is another smell, cedar smoke and clove. You sit up straighter, that's a relay fire. Another courier is signaling a rider's arrival, probably yours. Better prepare yourself. The next station might hold answers, or more questions soaked in sandalwood and secrecy. The signal fire ahead releases a steady column of grey, its smoke curling skyward like the tail of a sleeping dragon. You ride toward it with a strange sense of anticipation, half expecting some mysterious official to be waiting with a bowl of soup and a 10-line explanation of your perfumed mystery. Spoiler: there's no soup. No official either. Just a young boy with 2 long sleeves and a fire poker blinking at you from behind a veil of wood smoke. You're early, he says, rubbing soot onto his cheek by accident. You dismount with a groan. Or maybe you're late. He shrugs. then gestures toward a long bench beneath a canvas awning. "You want tea or pickles?" "Both," you say, tying your horse to the hitching post. He disappears behind a folding screen and returns with a chipped clay mug and a saucer of something that smells like vinegar and hope. The tea is barely warm, the pickles are mostly turnip. Still, it's hospitality, and it gives you a chance to rest your legs and unshoulder that saddlebag. The moment the bag hits the bench, the scent escapes again, clearer now, more assertive. The boy's nose wrinkles. "Are you carrying peach blossom?" You raise an eyebrow. "You can tell." "I sweep for a priest who sells incense," he says proudly. "I know 100 smells. That one's rare. But the priest says it only gets used when someone's pretending to be important." He says it without judgment, like someone noting cloud shapes. Still, the comment lands with a thud in your chest. Pretending to be important. What if that's exactly what you're doing? Your route isn't the highest priority. You're not carrying war dispatches or sacred edicts. Just 3 ordinary letters with unremarkable seals and standard ribbons. And yet there's this vial, this rare, expensive scent that even a village boy recognizes. You sip your tea, watching the steam rise in spirals, like the perfume in your mind. One mainstream historical fact: many Tang messengers didn't know what they were delivering. The empire was vast, and secrecy was sacred. Some scrolls contained coded instructions for armies. Others were reports on distant provinces laced with flattery or quiet rebellion. Still others were just letters from one bored noble to another, discussing poetry, peaches, and how terrible the latest musical performance had been. But fragrance was personal. That's what made it dangerous. A fringe historian named Liao Ganshi once wrote that the real reason for scented letters wasn't political at all, it was romantic. According to him, Tang couriers often became accidental intermediaries in forbidden love affairs. They carried secret poems, strands of hair, or droplets of shared scent. He even suggested that some perfumed letters were meant to be misdelivered just to cause political confusion. No one takes Liao completely seriously, of course. But some days, riding alone with that sweet-spiced bottle knocking softly against your ribs, you start to wonder. You finish the tea, leave the pickles untouched, and retie your sash. The boy hands you a fresh satchel with a food packet and a refill of ink wash soap. Before you mount up, he pauses and says, "Don't let it spill. That kind of perfume brings ghosts." You give him a skeptical look. He smiles. Just what the priest says. The next stretch of road is flatter, straighter, and a little dull. Good for letting your mind wander. You think about the ministry of fragrance again. Imagine some bored clerk in Chang'an, hunched over parchment, cataloguing the precise ratio of ambergris to cinnamon bark. You picture them leaning in to sniff a new blend like a sommelier with too much time. It's a funny image until you remember that those records were considered state property. Stealing a formula could be punished by exile or forced labor. And it wasn't just nobles who wanted to smell unique. Courtesans, poets, even military officers commissioned signature scents. Some wore them into battle, others wore them to funerals. A few never wore them at all, choosing instead to be remembered for their absence of scent. That was its own kind of statement. A quirky tidbit? One infamous Tang general refused to bathe before campaigns, but he did anoint his armor with lemon balm and dried iris. His enemies reportedly thought he was a ghost made of laundry. He won 5 battles. The sun begins to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows across the road. You reach the top of a small ridge and stop to rest the horse. From here, you can see the rooftops of a distant village, smoke trailing up in lazy lines. And for a brief moment, the wind changes and you smell something impossible. The same scent, not from your bag, from there. You sit very still, breathing through your nose. Once more, yes, it's unmistakable. The same perfume you carry is already in the village air. Faint, but present, like a signature left on the wind, which means someone else is using it. You've never felt so alert and so confused at the same time. And what does that mean? Is this village your destination? Are you delivering something that's already arrived? Or are you about to meet the person who created the scent in the first place? Historians still argue whether couriers like you were ever meant to understand the full meaning of what they carried. Some say the ignorance was intentional, a shield, a mercy. Others argue that the empire trusted its riders with everything, knowledge, scent, and all. But right now, you're not sure you want the truth. The last of the light disappears behind the hills as you begin your descent. Each hoofstep sounds louder in the quiet. You think about the boy's warning, about ghosts, about the way scent clings to memory more fiercely than ink. As you ride into the village, you catch sight of a figure watching from a doorway. They're holding a bottle. It glints amber in the dusk. The bottle in the figure's hand catches the last smudge of sunset like a shard of melted gold. You slow your horse without thinking. It isn't fear, not yet. It's a kind of mental bracing, like the moment you realize your chopsticks have picked up something still twitching. The village around you is quiet in the way that only small places can be. Doors half open, rice pots steaming gently in doorways, chickens giving you side-eye. And this person, standing in the shadows near a crooked signpost, doesn't move. They just hold the bottle up. Not threatening, not beckoning, just showing. You dismount, letting your horse's reins hang loose. It snorts and starts cropping at a tuft of wild onion without concern. You square your shoulders, adjust the saddlebag across your back, and approach. The person steps forward, middle-aged, robe cinched with a sash bearing the emblem of the Ministry of Rites. Their expression is unreadable, half curiosity, half exhaustion. But it's the bottle that draws your attention again. It's not exactly like yours. Thicker glass, a different wax seal, but the colour of the liquid inside, identical. They speak first. How far did you carry it? You blink. From the Changyuan relay, westward route. They nod slowly. Same blend? You hesitate. Then reach into your bag and produce your vial, still wrapped in silk. The person holds out their hand, not demanding, just offering. You place it in their palm. They turn it gently in the fading light. This was the first one, they say. Mine's the echo. You glance around. What does it mean? They look up. That depends. Do you think messages should be read with the eyes or the nose? You open your mouth, then close it? Because what are you supposed to say to that? They smile faintly, as if satisfied by your confusion. Come inside. The building behind them turns out to be an herbalist's shop, but more shrine than store. Dried flowers hang from the beams in intricate clusters, lavender, mugwort, chrysanthemum, and other plants you can't name. The air inside hums with scent. Not perfume exactly. Memory. Time. You take a seat on a low stool, setting your bag at your feet. They unwrap your vial carefully like it's a sacred text. You know why the couriers carry perfume? You shrug. To hide body odor? They chuckle. Their guess, but no, it's to tell a second story. The written message is only part of it. Scent shapes mood. Scent unlocks memory. Scent. They tap the vial. There's a key. They move to a cabinet and retrieve a scroll. This letter you're carrying? It's about trade tariffs between two grain districts. Boring, expected, politically sterile. You frown. Then why the perfume? They unroll the scroll, exposing neatly written characters in dark blue ink. Because the scent is what gets it read. The official this is addressed to suffers from failing eyesight. He reads by memory, by pattern, but he recognizes this scent. They tap the wax seal as the signature of a certain former friend, the one person whose messages he'll read all the way through, no matter how much his vision blurs. Your eyebrows rise. So it's a trick? A nudge, they say. A kindness. You lean back, absorbing this. Historians still argue whether perfume was used to clarify messages or to obscure them. They nod. And they're both right. Scent is honest. Interpretation is not. Outside, a wind rises. You can hear the prayer bells from the next building over, clinking against each other softly. The herbalist pours you a cup of something warm and red. It smells like hawthorn and old plum wine. Drink, they say. It'll clear your head. You do. It's tart, sharp, but not unpleasant. They pause, watching you. I was a courier too, they say finally. Before the knee gave out. Carried this blend once, made me feel like a spy and a bride all at once. You laugh before you can stop yourself. What's it actually made of? Their eyes twinkle. Base of sandalwood, middle of orchid cassia, and something called Emperor's Breath. Top notes, peach blossom and smoked loquat peel. You blink. What the hell is Emperor's Breath? They wave a hand. No one knows, probably just a name or a metaphor. Or maybe the guy who made it had a cold that day. You laugh again, and it feels strange, like you haven't done it in days. A quirky tidbit? One famous Tang perfumer created a scent so powerful it was banned from court because it made scribes cry uncontrollably during paperwork reviews. They called it Ink Storm. The recipe was lost after a goat ate the master copy. That same goat allegedly went on to live a very peaceful life as a mountain hermit's pet. You linger in the shop longer than intended, but eventually duty taps you on the shoulder. The herbalist rolls the scroll carefully, reseals the wax, and hands it back to you. They replace your vial with a new one, identical in scent, but with a fainter finish, almost smoky. What's different, you ask. This version is for arrival, they say. It tells the recipient that the journey is ending. You bow slightly. And what about me? They smile. You smell like someone in the middle of a story. You mount your horse in the dark. No torch. Just starlight and instinct. The road ahead winds between rice paddies and low stone walls. Somewhere far down that path is a man with blurred eyes waiting to smell the memory of a friend, and you, the invisible hand that delivers it. The village fades behind you like mist off a teacup. Quiet, fragrant, strangely full of secrets for a place with only 5 chickens and 1 functioning well. Your horse moves at a slower gait now, not out of fatigue, but out of sync with the hush of night. Even the insects seem to hum softer, as if not wanting to disturb the story you're carrying. You think about that new vial tucked in your satchel, the scent for arrival, smokier, deeper, still floral, but touched by something like burnt leaves or the last echo of incense in a shut-up temple. You wonder how someone could design a smell that suggests completion, closure, a full stop. And more importantly, how could a man recognize that scent and not know immediately that something was being said to him? Wordlessly, you ride past terraced fields, silvered under the moon. Water glints in the channels like moving glass. A frog leaps across your path and disappears with a plop. Every once in a while the wind shifts, just enough for you to catch a trace of the new perfume. Not much. Just enough to know it's still there. It's strange, isn't it? How this entire ride, spanning valleys, hills, bad tea, and a possibly haunted bottle, has become not about the scrolls or the seals or the horse mileage, but about that scent, that tiny bottled signal that now feels like the real message. Our message. One mainstream historical fact. During the height of the Tang Dynasty, certain classes of couriers were considered more trustworthy than court scribes. Why? Because they were trained not to ask questions. They were blank slates, walking silence. You could tell a courier your secrets and be reasonably sure they wouldn't even understand what they meant. No politics, no reading between lines. Just deliver the message, carry the scent, ride. But the truth? Everyone smells something. And once you notice it, you start connecting it to everything. You remember a fringe tale shared around a relay fire one night, of a courier who delivered a vial of rosewater to a border general. No scroll, no wax seal, just the perfume. The general burst into tears, dismissed his troops, and returned to the capital the same day. Supposedly, the scent matched that worn by his daughter, who had died in childbirth years earlier. The letter never came, but the message did. Historians still debate whether this tale was exaggerated. But even if it's half true, it tells you something. Sometimes people only need a scent to decide what comes next. You tighten your grip on the reins. The moonlight sharpens as you pass a stone marker, half sunk, moss-eaten. You pause long enough to brush away the dirt. It reads, 10 li to the eastern gate, nearly there. You make camp for the night just past a clump of bamboo, in a hollow beside the road. Your horse grazes quietly. You light no fire, just chew a few strips of dried tofu and wrap yourself in your cloak. And as you lie on your back, staring at the stars that look like grains of rice scattered across black silk, the smell of the perfume seeps out again. More subtle now, sleepy. Like it, too, knows this leg of the journey is ending. You dream strange dreams. You're in a palace corridor where every curtain smells like a different memory. You walk past velvet that carries the scent of your mother's tea leaves, past a silk screen that smells like your first fever, a marble floor that smells faintly of fear, and behind every door a vial, labelled not with words but with moments. You wake before dawn, your body is stiff, your brain softer than rice porridge. You mount the horse with a groan and continue the last stretch. By the time the eastern gate appears, the sky is the colour of wet paper. The city beyond stirs, slowly, market stalls clattering open, the clang of morning pots, a dog barking at a rooster like it owes it money. You're waved through the outer gate with a nod, your courier sash glinting with dried sweat. Inside, the city smells dense, not bad, just full, like a festival compressed into a scroll. Soy sauce, dust, roast chestnuts, fish, tallow candles, ink. And under it all, like a thread pulling everything else along, is your scent, the one in your bag, the one in the letter. The guards at the inner court pause you briefly. They check your seal, your credentials, and give your horse an apologetic pat. Poor thing's seen better days, one of them mutters. You nod, so have you. Finally, you're led down a narrow corridor, past a garden with crushed mint lining the stones, and into a receiving room where the windows are papered with pressed flower petals. The man waiting inside wears a robe of indigo silk. His eyes are clouded, not completely blind, but close. He gestures without looking. Approach. You kneel, unwrap the scroll, and place the vial beside it. He doesn't touch the letter. He lifts the vial, unseals it, inhales, long, deep. His expression doesn't change, but you hear him exhale like someone releasing 10 years of breath. He sets it down. That's all, he says. You pause. Do you want me to read it aloud? No need. I've read it already. You rise slowly, sling your bag over your shoulder and walk out. You don't look back. The door closes behind you with the softest click. You step back into the garden, the door whispering shut behind you like a secret that no longer needs to be told. The scent still clings to your robe, fainter now, like a song finishing its last notes. You pause beneath a low-hanging magnolia branch, touch the edge of a petal absently, and glance toward the eastern sky, where the sun is finally starting to assert itself. A golden wash spills across the rooftops like fresh ink on raw parchment. You should feel triumphant. Message delivered. No swords drawn. No bandits. No lost scrolls. Just a few strange conversations. One very talkative bottle. And a deepening suspicion that the real contents of your courier bag weren't the letters at all. You head back toward the stables where your tired horse waits, chewing something from a bucket that smells like boiled rice and pickled mustard stems. A groom bows silently and begins brushing dust off your saddle. You reach down and check the satchel. It feels lighter. The replacement perfume, the one the herbalist gave you, is still in there. But just barely. A whisper of a scent now, not quite gone, but certainly fading. And maybe that's the point. You lean against the stable wall and exhale through your nose. Still sandalwood. Still something sweet beneath it. You glance around and spot an older courier tightening the straps on his own pack. He catches your eye and smirks. You look like someone who just smelled something they didn't understand. You smirk back. Better than someone who understood it too late. He nods once, as if that makes perfect sense. You mount a new horse, this one taller, darker, the kind that looks like it judges your breakfast choices. As the gate opens and the city slowly rolls past behind you, the wind changes direction, and you realize something odd. You're still scented, but it's you now, not the bottle. The perfume has clung to your robe, your skin, maybe even your thoughts. You are, as the herbalist said, someone in the middle of a story, and that scent, the signature blend of peach blossom, sandalwood and smoke, has decided to come along for the ride. One mainstream historical fact: many Tang Dynasty officials travelled with scent bags, small cloth pouches tied to their belts or hidden in sleeves. These weren't just decorative. Some believed the right fragrance warded off evil, attracted fortune, or even calmed bureaucratic nerves before high-stakes examinations. One particularly nervous chancellor allegedly kept a scent pouch so strong it once made a whole delegation faint in a closed room. The emperor, reportedly, loved it. A quirky bit of trivia? During one particularly hot summer, the imperial court experimented with cooling scents. Perfumes designed not just to smell refreshing, but to make you feel physically cooler. The formula? Mint, camphor, lotus, and a pinch of something called moon resin. It failed spectacularly. Most users just sneezed themselves into heatstroke. The road bends again, leading you toward the southern outskirts of the city. You pass a tea house with red lanterns still swaying from the previous night. You slow just long enough to catch the smell of oolong and fried rice cakes. Tempting, but you're not ready to stop just yet, because now something unexpected stirs inside you. A question, one that hadn't mattered before but now won't leave you alone. Who sent that scent? Not who bottled it. You know that. But who decided that you, out of the hundreds of couriers running this wide-wired empire, should carry it? You didn't ask for it. You didn't even know it was there until your second day out. But it was chosen. Selected. Paired like a wine with a meal, or a robe with a poem. And suddenly, the idea that it was chosen at random feels absurd. Historians still argue whether Tang couriers were ever pawns in palace games they didn't even know were being played. Some say yes, there are entire records of scrolls that were never meant to be delivered, only tracked. Others say no, the system was too sacred, too functional, too clean for such manipulation. You suspect the truth is like your robe now, somewhere between clean and stained, pure and perfumed. By midday, the hills grow softer, rounder. The wind changes again, bringing with it the smell of pine and something faintly citrusy. Your new route stretches toward a cluster of villages known for their incense markets and winter pears. You're not scheduled to stop there. But maybe you will. Maybe you'll ask around, not for information, for recognition. You want to see someone's eyes widen at the scent you now wear without realizing. You want to see if anyone stops, blinks, and says, "You smell like that message I once dreamed of but never received." Because somewhere deep down, you suspect that perfume was never a code for someone else. It was a mirror gently held up to you. The southern road unfurls like a ribbon through fields, just beginning to green with early rice shoots. You ride at a leisurely pace now, neither in a rush nor entirely sure where you're going next. The letter's been delivered. The saddlebag is light. Your horse's hooves sound soft and rhythmic on the packed dirt, and that lingering scent, faint but undeniable, is still woven into your sleeves. You try not to overthink it, but let's be honest, you do. There's a strange intimacy to carrying scent. Unlike a scroll, which stays rolled and unread until the seal is broken, a perfume makes itself known before you even arrive. It introduces you, frames you, speaks on your behalf. And what it says, well, that's the mystery, isn't it? You pass a farmer walking beside an ox cart. He sniffs the air as you ride by, then turns his head slightly and smiles. Carrying spices? No, you call back. Just stories. He laughs and waves, and you don't stop. But that moment stays with you for a while. In the Tang Dynasty, smell wasn't just about identity, it was about memory. One mainstream historical fact. In elite households, every room had its own dedicated scent. Not just incense sticks. Sharp sticks. We're talking hand-woven sachets hung in rafters, perfume oils dabbed on scroll handles, even carved cedar panels soaked in custom infusions. Why? Because when you walked through someone's estate, you weren't just seeing their wealth, you were breathing in their lineage, their stories, their secrets. It made entrances dramatic and exits unforgettable. You crest a hill by mid-afternoon and spot a cluster of stalls ahead. Temporary market tents pitched along a bend in the road. Their canvas flaps flutter in the breeze like the sleeves of overly excited monks. Bright strips of paper list the wares: candied ginger, jade beads, gooseberry wine. And, there in the corner, beneath a faded parasol, perfumes. You shouldn't stop. But of course you do. The stall is manned by a woman of indeterminate age with fingers stained yellow from dried petals. Dozens of tiny glass vials line her table like captured stars. She watches you approach, then squints and sniffs. She says. Someone's been bathing in palace-level heartbreak. You blink. Excuse me? She chuckles. That blend you're trailing. Peony, sandalwood, something smoky, maybe tea bark? Let me guess. You didn't pick it. You shake your head. It was, part of a delivery. Then it wasn't a scent, she says, matter of fact. It was a suggestion. You tilt your head. A suggestion of what? She leans closer. Of who you might become, depending on where you go next. You exhale through your nose. That's a lot to ask from a smell. She shrugs. Everything leaves a trail. You just haven't looked behind you yet. You browse a bit. She offers you 3 new blends to sample. One smells like fresh pine and rain. The second like tangerine peel and old scrolls. The third is unexpected, peppery, almost metallic, but softened by something floral. You flinch as it hits your senses. It reminds you of someone you forgot on purpose. You put the stopper back in and nod politely. I'll stick with what I've got. She smiles. Wise, the road's not done using it yet. As you remount and ride on, her words echo behind you. You begin to wonder, is scent ever just a detail? Or is it the whole frame of the story? A quirky fact, Tang-era messengers often carried not just scrolls, but accompanying atmospheres. Portable tokens like incense slips, pressed leaves, or even bits of cloth soaked in perfume. Why? Because some recipients could tell who sent the message just by the scent of the package. One official was said to have rejected all letters that arrived unscented, claiming they were hollow and improperly born. Hollow letters, unscented souls. You watch as a hawk wheels overhead, circling lazily on a thermal. Below, the road bends along a marshy stretch where lotus blossoms rise from murky water like pink punctuation marks. That scent, the one from your robe, your skin, your thoughts, wafts up again. And this time, something clicks. You're not just carrying a scent anymore, you're carrying its memory. And memories, unlike scrolls, don't require sealing wax. They just need time. And breath. The next town comes into view at twilight, its lanterns glowing orange and gold along the eaves of low-tile roofs. You pass through without stopping, letting the horse set its own pace. A child chases a dog across the road. A shopkeeper sprinkles cinnamon powder onto a roasting yam. A priest lights a string of incense at a roadside altar. No one notices you, but some of them inhale sharply. Then look puzzled, as if they've remembered something important but can't place it. And maybe that's what you are now, a reminder, a walking trace of someone else's story, and a quiet invitation to begin your own. The town fades into a constellation of lantern lights behind you, each flickering dot like a tiny floating memory on the night breeze. The road narrows again, flanked by mulberry trees heavy with pale green fruit. Your horse's hooves sink slightly into the softer dirt path, and you tug the reins just enough to ease into a slower rhythm. After all, you're not racing a deadline anymore. Whatever that perfume was meant to deliver, it's been delivered. Or has it? Because now, days into the ride, scrolls completed, and satchels half empty, you find yourself full of more questions than ever. The perfume lingers, less a smell now, more a presence, like an echo you can't stop hearing, or a tune that plays behind your thoughts when everything else is quiet. You reach into your sleeve and tug out a clean handkerchief. Wipe your brow. Even it has the scent now, soaked in by proximity, by accident, or maybe by some deeper design. You almost laugh. You're a walking sachet, but it's not funny, really, because scent has become your identity. One mainstream historical fact: during the Tang period, identity could be signaled by color, clothing, even by the way you tied your sash. But smell? That was intimate. That was hard to forge. You could copy handwriting, fake a seal, lie through poetry. But you couldn't cheat a nose, and so some nobles began leaving traces of signature scents in their official documents. Scented wax, infused silk cords, even scrolls smoked gently over specific woods, like secret handshakes, but for the olfactory. You think of the man who received your letter, his cloudy eyes, the way he breathed in first before even touching the scroll, the way he said, "I've read it already." He wasn't being poetic. He meant it literally. The scroll was redundant. The message was in the scent, a memory he hadn't expected to return. You were just the vessel. And maybe that's the point of this whole journey. You crest a ridge and stop your horse to rest. The sky above is moonless tonight. Stars alone scatter the heavens, thin and delicate like gold leaf pressed onto indigo silk. You dismount, stretch your legs and sit at the edge of a small overlook. Below, the valley breathes. Lanterns flicker far off in what might be a monastery. You smell cooking rice, wet stone, a whisper of citrus and night flowers. And beneath it all, your scent, no longer just from the bottle, but from you, from your passage, your touch. A rustle behind you draws your attention. Another courier approaches on foot, leading a winded horse. You nod. They nod back. No need for words. You both know the weight of the road, but then they pause. Sniff once. Look at you sideways and say, "That's the same blend they gave me in Suzhou. Peach blossom, bit of smoked sandalwood. For delivery to someone grieving." You freeze. Grieving? The courier shrugs. That's what they told me. The scent carries sympathy. Mine went to a widow in Chang'an. Said it reminded her of the sea. They mount their horse and ride on, leaving you with a new knot in your stomach. Grieving. You think back to the recipient of your message. His hands, trembling slightly, his voice, quiet. Not mournful exactly, but still. What did that scent bring back for him? Not a fact, not an update, a person, a moment, maybe someone he couldn't name aloud anymore. And now that smell clings to you. You lie back on the grass and stare at the sky. A breeze carries the night forward, brushing your cheeks with the gentleness of a sigh. You close your eyes and let the questions settle like dust. A quirky historical footnote. There was once a Tang monk who claimed he could predict someone's fate based on their scent alone. He said sadness smelled like steamed lotus, ambition like burned cloves, love, according to him, was mint and beeswax and iron. He died with no disciples, but his pillow was said to smell like dried roses for 100 years. You're not sure what you believe anymore, but tonight you believe this. Smell is not just memory, it's prophecy. You wrap yourself in your cloak and drift to sleep under stars that do not blink. And somewhere in the folds of your robe, a faded scent watches over you, carried not in a vial, but in you now, completely. You wake just before dawn, the world still dipped in that rare hush between dreaming and daylight. No bird song yet, no wind, just your heartbeat and the faint weight of dew settling into your clothes. You sit up slowly, brushing moisture from your sleeves, and inhale deeply. It's still there, the perfume. Fainter now, diluted by travel, worn thin by time and air, but undeniably present. The peach blossom edge softened to something gentler, the sandalwood mellowed. The smoke, now, just a sigh. You're not surprised anymore. You saddle up in silence, letting your hands move without thought. The road stretches forward, cutting a gentle path through fields of early millet and low hills, scattered with mossy stones. No rush, no assigned message today. For once you're just riding, but it doesn't feel idle. It feels like listening. The scent is telling you something, you just haven't translated it yet. About an hour into the ride, you spot another way station up ahead. This one's older. Half the roof looks held together by prayer flags and sheer optimism. A crow watches you from the ridgepole, head tilted like it's judging your posture. You dismount anyway and step inside. The station keeper is ancient, possibly a fossil. He blinks once at you and mutters, "Courier?" You nod, he sniffs, then chuckles. "One of those?" You raise an eyebrow. "One of what?" "The scented ones." He pulls out a chipped teacup and fills it from a kettle that looks like it survived 3 dynasties. You all think we don't notice, but we do. You sit on a low bench. Did they always do this? Assign perfume to messages? The old man leans back, stretching creaky joints. No, not always. Used to be. A letter was just a letter. Words and wax, but somewhere along the way someone decided smells said more. You sip the tea. It's mostly hot water with a ghost of chrysanthemum. Who decided? He shrugs. Who decides anything in this empire? A eunuch, probably, or a concubine with too much time. Much time? You grin despite yourself. One mainstream historical fact. In the later Tang years, there's record of a scent protocol being quietly distributed among palace scribes. It detailed which blends were appropriate for which messages. Sandalwood for condolences, ginger and pine for military updates, plum and rose for apologies, citrus oils for political requests. It wasn't mandatory, but it became an art form. Courtiers competed to embed their intentions subtly, masterfully, in a few drops of oil. Letters were read with noses first, then eyes. You finish the tea and linger in the doorway. The scent in your robe catches a gust of wind and disappears briefly, then returns, curling around you like a cat that never left. The station keeper watches you. It's not just perfume, he says softly. It's memory soaked in motion. That's why it stays with you. You nod, and then he adds with a wink, "Of course, sometimes it's just a distraction. Once delivered a scroll to a governor who thought the smell meant the emperor was flirting with him." You laugh aloud, startling your horse. That's your quirky fact for the day. You ride on, leaving the creaking station behind. As the sun rises higher, your path winds through a narrow pass where the rocks loom close on either side. The air here is cooler, shaded, and smells like lichen and cold stone. But still somehow the perfume remains. It's as if your body has internalized it, holding onto it like a ghost. It's not ready to let go. You remember something the herbalist said back in that shop full of drying leaves and dusty scrolls. The scent you carry tells people what kind of story you're in. So what kind of story are you in? You've travelled without incident. Delivered a message that didn't need to be read. Been recognized by scent before speech. You've become a question that other people answer without realizing. A moving riddle. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the empire intended. Historians still argue whether perfume assignments were based on message content or the courier's character, whether the scent was meant to disguise, decode, or reveal. There's no consensus, just a few surviving vials, some scrolls, and a lot of speculation. But here's what you've come to believe. The scent is not a layer on top of the story. It is the story. And you, courier with tired legs and sun-chapped lips, are the last part of that sentence. By mid-afternoon, you stop to rest beneath a pomegranate tree. Its flowers are bright red, almost indecently cheerful. A bee hovers near your collar, drawn by something it can't quite name. You smile. "Same here," you mutter. The breeze picks up. You lie down again, one hand resting lightly over your satchel, not to protect it, but to keep it close. And as the wind curls around you, you realize something both lovely and strange. You don't smell like the road anymore. The road smells like you. The sun leans westward now, casting that warm, sideways light that makes even the dust look thoughtful. You sit beneath the pomegranate tree a while longer, listening to the creak of your saddle settling beside you, the buzz of insects weaving threads between leaves, and the quiet hum of your own breath. You're in no hurry. No one's waiting for you today. No scroll needs urgent delivery. No postmaster is frowning at a time ledger or checking the wax seals for smudges. The Empire can survive for one afternoon without you. And besides, there's a new question blooming quietly in your mind. What happens when the scent wears off? Not the one in your robe, though that's fading too, but the deeper one. The identity you've worn these past few days. The version of yourself that wasn't just a courier, but a vessel for something quieter and more profound. The message beneath the message. The unspoken thing. What if that fades? What if, without the perfume, you go back to being invisible? You stand, brush the dust from your robes, and begin walking beside your horse instead of riding. It seems right. You want to feel the ground again, to hear your own footsteps without hooves covering the rhythm. One mainstream historical fact. Long-distance Tang couriers were sometimes required to take a vow of silence for the duration of their route, not for secrecy, but to better absorb details. Observations, atmospheres. They weren't just runners. They were recorders of terrain, of mood, of scent. Some even kept travel logs where they noted smells along the road as diligently as milestones. Cinnamon at the Eastern Market. Camphor in the low hills. Rain on silk. Burned garlic in the village square. Their reports, if preserved, read like poetry filtered through a nose. You think maybe you'd like to write one of those, not now, but someday. Maybe after the scent fades. You reach a low stone bridge crossing a stream and pause there. The water glides over smooth rocks, catching the gold light like liquid brass. You squat down, cupping your hands in the flow, and splash your face. Cold, bracing, the kind of cold that reminds you where your skin ends and the world begins. And just as you rise, you catch it again. That scent, not from your sleeve, from the air. You freeze. It's the same one. Your scent, but not yours, not your bottle. It's fresher, stronger, untouched by travel. You look up slowly. Across the bridge stands another courier. Robes dusted with road, hair tied back with a strip of cloth that looks suspiciously like it was once part of a scroll pouch. Their horse drinks from the stream downstream, utterly unbothered. The courier watches you with mild curiosity, then raises a hand and nods. You nod back. They don't speak, neither do you, but both of you are now breathing in the same message, same scent, same story. Two couriers who've never met, now linked by a trail of sandalwood and fading peach blossom. Maybe you're delivering the same emotion to different people. Or maybe this is just the Empire's strange way of keeping its secrets honest, spreading them out so no one person holds too much. You cross the bridge in silence. As you pass each other, you catch a sharper note beneath the perfume. Clove, maybe. Or dry tea leaves. A variation on your blend. Not quite yours, not quite different. You wonder what message they're carrying. You wonder if they're wondering the same about you. After a few more steps, you glance back. They've stopped on the bridge, looking out at the water. You let them be. A quirky fact, one Tang courier was once imprisoned for perfume hoarding. He reportedly saved dregs of royal scents in bits of cloth, then sold them to perfumers in the capital. One buyer claimed to create a fragrance called Imperial Regret from the scraps. It was banned for being too accurate. You ride again, but slower. And as the landscape opens into flat farmland, you realize the scent is starting to become something else entirely. Memory, not in the melancholy way, not yet, but in the way all sensations do, when they go from being happening to happened. You wonder if one day you'll pass someone in a crowded inn or ride past a jasmine-scented shrine, and this whole journey will come flooding back in a single breath. Not the scrolls, not the horses, just the scent, the feeling, the person you were in this strange, sweet, smoky stretch of time. And it won't be sad, it'll just be a chapter. The one where you learned to read without your eyes, the one where you learned to listen without your ears, the one where your job was to deliver a message, and the message ended up being you. The fields stretch wide now like soft cloth pulled taut between rivers. The rows of green shimmer in the wind, and your horse walks slow enough to hear every swish of tail through grass, every squeak of the saddle, every rustle of wind against the rice. The air is cleaner out here, less tangled with town smells, no oil smoke, no fish stalls, just water and soil and something faintly citrusy riding on the breeze. And beneath it, still, that perfume. You think of it now the way you'd think of a travelling companion. Not quite a friend, not quite a guide, but someone or something that's been there every mile, through dust and mist, uphill and down, always there when you pause to breathe. But you're aware now that it's changing. The scent is growing quieter. You're not sure if it's your nose adjusting or if the journey has used it up like a wick on a candle. You touch the neck of the vial still tucked in your bag. It's almost empty now. A few stubborn drops cling to the glass, like the last words of a letter you've read 100 times. There's something comforting about that, like a goodbye you can smell coming. You stop at a roadside shrine by late morning. It's small, barely more than a box on a pole, with a sloping tile roof and a bundle of incense sticks crumbling in a chipped holder. Someone's left a tiny dish of dried plums beside a ceramic rabbit. You light a stick, more out of habit than belief, and murmur a thank you to the road, to the scent, to whoever made this whole journey feel heavier than a scroll and lighter than air. One mainstream historical fact: shrines like this dotted Tang roads every few li. Some were dedicated to old gods, others to anonymous ancestors, and still others to the spirits of passage, nameless figures believed to guide the feet of travellers and the hands of messengers. It was said that if a courier bowed at just the right time and left a trace of scent behind, the message would arrive more clearly, like cutting through fog with perfume. You wonder if your scent has done that, clarified something for someone. You remount and ride on. Not long after, you reach a fork in the road. One path leads west, back toward the central post routes and well-mapped cities. The other winds south into less travelled country, no relay stations for days, but quieter, fewer eyes. You pause. Technically, your assignment is complete. The official delivery is done. You're free to return, check in, rest your horse, collect your ration of barley and pickled vegetables, and wait for the next dispatch. But the thought of it feels too tidy. Too soon? The road south hums with possibility, not because you know what's down there, but because you don't. And isn't that what the scent was always about? Not instruction, invitation. You glance again at the vial, almost empty. You take a risk. You unstopper it and tip the final drop onto the edge of your sash. The scent rises, full, round, complete, as if the entire story packed into that bottle has waited for this moment. The very last breath, the closing word. You inhale and you turn south. A quirky footnote: some Tang perfumers believed the last drop of a vial held the most powerful part, not just because it was concentrated, but because it carried the weight of everywhere the bottle had been. They called it the memory route, a perfume's shadow soul. As you descend into the southern road, you feel lighter. Not because you're carrying less, but because you've finally decided to carry only what chose to stay. Your horse flicks an ear, sensing your mood. The wind picks up again, brushing your sash. Somewhere behind you, the empire turns over in its sleep. Somewhere ahead, a village you've never seen yet is about to smell something it can't name, but will remember. Because scent is memory, and memory is a message. And now, for the first time in this long, quiet journey, you are the letter. The southern road feels different beneath your horse's hooves, less worn, more intimate, like a footpath that decided to dream it could become a road. The trees here grow closer together, their trunks twisted, bark flaky like dried scroll paper. Ferns crowd the edges of the trail, brushing against your boots as you pass. Somewhere overhead, unseen birds chirp out lazy arguments. There's no milestone, no carved stone to tell you how far you've gone or how much remains. Just the scent of moss, wet bark, and that fading whisper of perfume. But you're not worried. The scent inside your sash has begun to mingle with you now. Your sweat, your skin, your own travelling scent. It's no longer a perfume you're wearing, it's something you're becoming. That thought is oddly comforting, like you've stepped out of your old role and into a version of yourself that doesn't need a wax seal to be official. You pause at a clearing to let your horse drink from a trickle of water running through smooth rocks. The light is soft here, filtered green, like old jade held up to a candle. You remove your satchel, give your shoulders a long stretch, and lean down beside the stream. The water smells of iron and fallen leaves, with the faintest floral trace. You dip your fingers in, that's when you spot it. Another strip of cloth knotted to a tree root, weathered, soft, scented. You pick it up and lift it to your nose. Your eyes widen, not your scent, but close. A sibling scent, same base, same core. But this one carries something cooler, minty, almost sharp. A scent meant to cut through heat and haze. Someone else came this way, someone carrying another story, one with a different ending, or maybe a different beginning. You tie the cloth gently back in place, a quiet nod to whoever left it. One mainstream historical fact. Tang couriers sometimes marked unofficial routes with scented cloth strips instead of ink symbols, especially in regions where weather erased signs quickly. It was a way of saying, "I was here," or "you're on the right path," or sometimes simply, "keep going." You mount up again and continue. The terrain dips now, gently rolling down toward a wide basin of farmland and narrow thatch roof villages tucked into folds of the earth. Smoke from cooking fires spirals upward. You spot a child chasing ducks along a path, her laughter somehow carried perfectly on the breeze. An old woman sits under a tree, combing her hair with a carved horn comb. Her motions are slow, precise, each stroke steady, like writing calligraphy on water. As you ride past, the child stops, sniffs the air, and looks at you curiously. Then she turns to the old woman. "Granny, that smell, it's like when you tell stories about Grandpa." The woman stops combing, smiles, doesn't look at you, but nods. You keep riding. No need to say anything. A scent has already arrived on your behalf. You reach a rise above a river bend and stop for the view. The water glistens in the slanted light, slow and deep and wide. It carries the color of the sky now, soft blue-gray. You feel something shift inside you, a release, not dramatic, not cinematic, just a gentle untying of a knot you didn't know was still there. You take the last clean square of cloth from your pack and press it briefly to your chest. Then, without overthinking, you tie it to a branch at the overlook. The breeze catches it immediately, and for a second you smell everything again: the first post station, the herbalist, the man with clouded eyes, the empty vial, yourself, a quirky tale. One Tang perfumer believed that a well-crafted scent would always find its way home, no matter who wore it. He claimed to have sent a perfume blend to a friend 2 provinces away by dabbing it on 5 different birds. No scrolls, no notes, just scent. 3 weeks later, the friend showed up at his door and said, "I kept smelling you." They reportedly drank peach wine for 2 days and said nothing else. You descend from the overlook, not toward any planned destination, but toward a village where the rice is nearly ready to harvest, and the people, hopefully, ask more questions with their noses than their mouths. No one stops you. No one needs to. Because long before you arrive, the wind tells them something, that someone is coming, carrying something they won't see, and that, if they're paying attention, will stay with them, just behind the memory, just behind the words, just behind the scent. You arrive in the village just as lanterns begin to bloom, open along the eaves. simple paper ones painted with faded symbols for peace, fortune, and quiet reign. Their soft glow spills out into the dust-packed lanes like puddles of melted moonlight. Children dart between stalls, chasing each other with twig swords. A few adults pause to look at you, their gazes gentle, curious, but not intrusive. They don't see a royal courier anymore, not in your loosened sash, or your dust-streaked robes, or the slight way your shoulders have dropped from weeks on the road. But still, they notice something. They sniff the air. Some squint, some smile faintly, as though recalling something delicious or lost. No one speaks, but one older man bent at the waist from decades of farming nods deeply at you as you pass. And that's enough. You stable your horse at the edge of the village under a sloped thatch roof. The attendant is a boy of maybe 9, but his hands move with the precision of someone 3 times his age. He offers you a seat on an overturned bucket while he brushes the dust from your saddle. You accept gratefully. He's silent for a long time. Then, "Did you come from the city?" You nod. He sniffs once. "You smell like someone who rode through a story." You almost ask what that smells like, but decide against it. You're starting to think everyone has their own definition, and yours is still unfolding. Inside the inn, the light is dim and golden, thick with the scent of sesame oil, boiled cabbage, and wood smoke soaked into the beams. You order noodles, sit by the paper window, and watch the village prepare itself for sleep. Lanterns dim one by one. Rice pots are scraped clean. Someone laughs softly, then stops. You don't realize you're holding the empty perfume vial in your palm until you feel the cool glass against your thumb. You uncork it one last time. There's nothing left inside, just a hint, a shadow. Like the way a voice lingers in a room after the speaker has gone. But still, you inhale. And for a moment, you remember everything all over again. The shrines, the stream, the cloth on the branch, the person on the bridge, the blind man with his unbroken heart. One mainstream historical fact. After long missions, some Tang couriers were granted a ceremonial bath, scented with their assigned perfume. The goal wasn't cleanliness, it was closure. A symbolic act of washing away the message, allowing the courier to return to civilian life. They called it the unwriting. You wonder if anyone still does that. If you could find a stream, pour the last whisper of scent into the current, and let it carry your journey out into the world, unspoken, but still felt. A woman across the room is watching you. She's not staring, not impolite, just curious. You nod to her. She lifts her teacup in acknowledgement, then turns back to her stew. You suspect she smelled it too? A quirky fact. There was once a Tang concubine who wore a perfume so delicate it could only be detected when she wept. The scent, said to be made from lotus resin and tears collected under moonlight, was thought to be cursed. But the emperor said it reminded him of honesty, and so he ordered it recreated every spring. You finish your meal and make your way to a room upstairs. Thin mattress, thicker silence. The window overlooks a patch of pumpkin vines and a sleeping dog. You sit on the edge of the bed and open your satchel one last time. The scrolls are gone, the seal's broken, the vial is empty. But the cloth inside, the one that lined the bottle, tucked in with no explanation, still faintly scented, you fold it neatly, slide it beneath your pillow, not for safekeeping, not for duty, just to keep the story close, because even if your hands are empty, your journey isn't. It clings to you now, in your hair, your clothes, the curve of your voice. You lie down. You lie down, and the mattress groans a bit beneath you. The scent rises softly, like breath. It no longer surprises you. You close your eyes and let it carry you into sleep. No longer a courier, not quite a messenger, but something quieter. Someone who once carried a perfume across an empire and found themselves somehow on the other side of it. You wake before dawn, not because of noise or light or even habit, but because something inside you is already moving. A gentle stirring like silk shifting in a cedarwood drawer. The village outside is still dark. Even the dogs aren't awake yet. The window glows with the faintest promise of sunrise, a horizon not yet drawn, just imagined. You sit up, slowly. The cloth under your pillow is warm now, faintly scented still. You press it to your cheek before folding it again, slipping it into your sleeve. It no longer feels like a courier's tool. It feels like a keepsake, a reminder of something that mattered in ways no scroll could fully say. You descend the narrow wooden stairs quietly, stepping over a sleeping cat curled on the fourth step. The innkeeper's still dozing near the hearth, arms crossed, mouth open, a snore rising and falling like a bellows. You don't wake him. You leave a coin in the empty bowl beside the door and step out into morning. The air is crisp, damp, and, oddly, expectant. Like it knows you're not quite done. You retrieve your horse, who greets you with a half-hearted flick of the tail and a sigh that sounds like, again. You smile and rub its nose. One more stretch, you whisper, then we rest. You ride with no destination, no satchel, no orders, just the scent. It barely lingers now, like the echo of music in a room where the instruments have already been packed away. But it's still there, beneath your robe, beneath your skin, somewhere between a sensation and a story. One mainstream historical fact. In later years, Tang historians noted a peculiar trend. Certain unnamed couriers, those who had carried high-tier perfume dispatches, often returned from their journeys. Changed. They spoke less, smiled differently. Some left service entirely. A few became poets, others opened tea-houses near old postal routes. And one reportedly became a perfumer who never created a single scent of their own. They just reproduced that one blend, again and again, for strangers who couldn't explain why they wanted it. You wonder if you'll become one of them. The sun finally breaks the ridge behind you. Light pours into the fields, turns the mist into gold, and gilds every leaf, every rice shoot, every thread on your worn sash. A farmer waves at you from a distance. You wave back, still moving, still following something. You pass another village, not large enough to have a name on the maps. Just a few homes, a well, and an old woman sitting on a stool, weaving baskets. You slow your horse, tip your head respectfully. She looks up. Then she sniffs the air and smiles. "You remind me of someone," she says, not unkindly. "Maybe I passed him. You offer?" She shakes her head. "No, you smell like the part they left behind." You thank her and ride on. You reach a crossroads by mid-morning, marked only by a crooked pole and 2 arrows, each pointing somewhere vague. River mouth and cypress trail. Neither matters. Because what matters now is something quieter than a mission. Something simpler than a map. You choose cypress trail. Not because you know what's there, but because you trust your nose. And something, maybe a memory, maybe fate, tells you that's the direction where the scent will finally end. Or begin again. A quirky historical footnote. One Tang-era poem describes the life of a perfume courier in the form of a riddle. It goes, he carries words without knowing them, leaves presents where he disappears. He rides beneath a scent that isn't his, and becomes it when the bottle clears. You ride through the cypress path for hours. The trees rise like soft pillars around you, their bark peeled into strips like scrolls forgotten by scribes. The shadows cool your cheeks. The road narrows again. No towns, no markers, just the sound of hooves on needled earth. And then a scent, not yours, not peach blossom, not sandalwood, something new, something ahead. You slow, dismount, lead your horse quietly, step by careful step. And there, in a clearing tucked so deep in green it almost feels painted, you see it. A person seated by a shallow stream cloaked in traveller's robes, a small vial balanced on their knee. They don't turn, but they speak. "You're late," they say. You smile. "Or maybe you're early." They finally turn their head. and in their eyes you see something impossible. Recognition. Not of you, maybe, but of the journey you now share. They don't ask your name, you don't ask theirs. Somewhere between the smell in the air and the silence between your footsteps, you've both already understood that this meeting isn't about identity, it's about arrival, not in a place but in a moment. A pause written in the quiet ink of scent and breath, and something older than instruction. They gesture to the stream. You sit beside them. The vial on their knee is uncorked, the scent drifting upward in lazy spirals. It's different from yours, cooler, with sharp citrus notes, and something warm underneath, like old parchment left in a sunlit room. You breathe it in, and the memory that comes isn't yours. But it could have been. They glance sideways. You smell like endings. You glance back. You smell like beginnings. They nod. That's why they sent us in opposite directions. It makes sense in a way nothing else has. One mainstream historical fact. In the later Tang period, it's believed that some perfume dispatches were intentionally sent in crossing patterns. One courier from the north, one from the south, both carrying complementary scents, meant to activate memories in different corners of the empire. Not because the recipients needed to know the same thing, but because they needed to feel a shared presence, a sense of connection without needing words. You lean forward, pluck a leaf from the edge of the stream, and hold it up to the sunlight filtering through the canopy. They told me nothing, you say. Same, they reply. And somehow that feels like a confession and a bond. They reach into their bag and pull out a square of cloth. It's tied with a thin blue thread, stained faintly at the corners with a blend you can't identify. They unfold it slowly, revealing a second vial, half full. They gave me one to keep. Said I'd know when to use it. You raise an eyebrow. And do you? They shake their head. But I think you do. You don't reach for it. You just inhale. And suddenly, everything you've been carrying sharpens. You see it all. The blind official and his unspoken grief, the perfumed cloth tied to the tree, the marketplace with the old woman who said you smelled like heartbreak, the monk's ridiculous theory about tears and lotus resin, the scroll that said nothing but arrived full of meaning. The memory route. The moment it all changed. And now this mirrored messenger who arrived from the far path, carrying not a message but the next sentence. You close your eyes and nod. They pass you the vial. You take it gently as if it were alive. A quirky side note from a forgotten herbalist's manual. When two scents cross in the wild, neither is lost. Both are transformed. This is why the wind never smells the same twice. You uncork the vial. Just briefly. Just long enough. The scent blooms between you, immediate, tender, and utterly unfamiliar. For once, you smell something that holds no memory at all. It's completely new, and that somehow makes it feel sacred. Together you sit in stillness, two couriers who never received instructions, two bottles that travelled hundreds of li to arrive side by side, two halves of a sentence the empire never wrote down. You look to your companion. They smile. You ready to ride again? You think for a long moment. Then, not yet. You lie back in the moss beside the stream, arms folded behind your head, eyes scanning the canopy above. The scent hangs between you like a flag without a nation. You've delivered the message. And now, for the first time, you're ready to listen to what comes next. You stay by the stream until the sun slides past its highest point, the light shifting from gold to something sleepier. Honey, maybe, or the pale glaze on dried apricots. The air thickens with warmth. The insects begin to hum louder. You and your fellow courier don't speak much, but the silence is easy now. No tension. Just the sort of quiet you fall into when two stories end up under the same tree and don't mind sharing the shade. You watch the water flow. Watch how it curls around the rocks, how it never really stops moving, even when it seems still. You think that's what a message really is. Not ink, not scent, not scrolls sealed in silk. It's movement. carried from one breath to the next. Your companion leans forward and dips their finger into the stream, stirs the surface once, and watches the ripples radiate out until they vanish into reflections. Then they say, "I think the Empire uses us as a kind of map." You tilt your head. Us? Messengers, couriers, not just for distance, for feeling. They tap their empty satchel. You can't send a mood through a scroll. You can't pass sorrow with wax, but a scent, that gets inside people. That lingers. You nod slowly. Maybe that's why we're not given explanations, they continue. Because it's not about understanding the message. It's about being the message. You glance at your sleeve, still faintly carrying the scent from earlier legs of your journey. It's changed again, subtler now, like something remembered through cloth. You don't need the vial anymore. You never did, really. You just needed time. One mainstream historical fact: some Tang physicians believed that scent could be used not only for healing, but for transmitting emotional states. Grief, longing, gratitude, even forgiveness. They called it the invisible tongue. And while modern scholars debate the practicality of it, accounts persist of nobles refusing written apologies unless they were accompanied by a cloth infused with a specific blend. You wonder what apology you carried, or if it was gratitude or love. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it was all of them. You and your companion eventually mount your horses again, side by side now, not heading back, not exactly forward either, just onward. There's no route assigned, no post waiting, but still something in the air nudges you toward a new direction. A village you've never heard of, a bend in the road no one mentions in the route books. You follow it anyway. A few hours later, as dusk begins to settle into the folds of the hills, you pass a house with its shutters thrown wide. From inside drifts the unmistakable scent of ginger, boiling in sweet soy. A child giggles, a kettle whistles, someone says something too quietly to hear, and someone else answers with laughter. And then, a change in the air. You both feel it at once. It's not your scent, but it's related. You stop your horses, look at each other, then back toward the house. It's just a home, but it smells like connection, like someone received a message long ago and kept it, folded inside memory, inside tradition, inside a kitchen at twilight. Your companion says, "I think this is one of the places the message landed." You nod. You don't knock. You don't enter. You just breathe it in and continue. A quirky anecdote from a traveling Tang monk. He once followed the same perfume trail for 7 days across 5 counties, convinced it was divine guidance. It turned out to be a spilled bottle strapped to the back of an ox. The monk later declared the ox enlightened. You laugh to yourself at the thought. Maybe the Empire didn't plan your route. Maybe the message didn't need planning. Maybe all it needed was for you to keep riding, keep breathing, keep allowing the scent to shape the silence between destinations. And now, as the stars begin to appear one by one, shy as candle flames, you and your companion make camp in an old fig grove. You hang your robe over a low branch to dry. Your horses settle in with contented huffs, and the air, filled with the warmth of the day and the quiet of what's being carried, wraps around you both like a second cloak. Not perfumed, not labelled, but somehow enough. The fig grove is silent in that ancient, heavy sort of way, like a place that's been remembering things long before people came along to name them. The leaves above you are thick, veined like river maps filtering starlight into shifting patches. Somewhere in the dark, an owl mutters to itself. Your fire is small and low, more ember than flame, casting a dull orange glow over your satchels, your boots, and your companion's quietly snoring horse. You lie on your back, arms folded behind your head, staring through the gaps in the leaves. The sky is cloudless now, and the stars are scattered like spilled millet, dense in some places, sparse in others. A breeze rustles the trees, and for a moment you swear you catch a scent that's neither yours nor your companion's. But then it's gone. You shift your head toward the other bedroll. "They told me once," your companion says suddenly, voice low and calm, that we only ever remember the first scent we truly noticed, not the first we smelled, the first we recognized as meaning something. You hum in agreement. "What was yours?" they ask. You think. Longer than you expect to. And then, "Boiled yam peels. When I was 5, my grandmother used to dry them on the stove lid. I didn't like the taste, but the smell meant we'd survived another winter." They nod. "Mine was laundry steam, rice starch and bamboo ash. Smelled like safety." You sit up slightly. You think the Empire knows that? Picks messengers based on emotional scent profiles? They grin. Wouldn't put it past them, all those clerks with nothing to do but invent meanings for why someone smells like loquat bark and not lemon rind. You both chuckle softly. And the fig trees listen. One mainstream historical fact. Among elite Tang families, it was customary to scent the paper used for birth and death announcements with specific blends. Births carried floral notes, osmanthus, plum blossom. Deaths were marked with vetiver, camphor, or dusted cedar. These scents often arrived before the letter itself. Doors would open not for a messenger, but for a memory already inhaled. You wonder what kind of announcement you've unknowingly carried. Maybe it wasn't a decree, maybe it was a kind of invitation, one that says, someone still remembers you, or someone forgives you now, or you can stop grieving. The message has arrived. You rise quietly, taking your robe from the branch where it hung to dry. It's cool to the touch. You press your nose into the fabric. The scent is barely there now, just enough to hint, not declare. It has moved from identity to echo, and yet it feels fuller somehow, like something that has completed its meaning. You walk a few steps away from camp, down to a place where the grove thins and opens into an unplanted field. The moon is rising, low and buttery. Fireflies pulse in the tall grass like messages trying to decide whether to arrive or not. You uncork your empty vial and tilt it sideways, one drop, no scent. But you swear the air changes anyway. You whisper, not loudly, not formally, not for anyone else's ears. "I carried what I didn't understand, and I arrived anyway. That's enough." You dig a small hollow with your heel and place the vial there, wrapping it in a corner of cloth and pressing it beneath the soil. Not buried, not hidden, just planted. Like a memory that no longer needs to be held. A quirky tale from a Tang garden manual. Some perfumers used to bury bottles of failed blends beneath citrus trees, believing the tree would either correct the formula or forget it kindly. No one knows if it worked, but they say the trees bloomed early. You return to camp. Your companion is already asleep, one hand resting on their satchel, like a parent might rest a hand on a sleeping child. You settle back into your bedroll. The scent on your clothes is no longer just peach blossom and sandalwood and a dash of political confusion. It's travel, it's sweat. It's the moment a scroll was delivered and nothing was said aloud, but everything was understood. And more than anything, it's you. Just you. Without the perfume, without the mission, still carrying the story. You close your eyes, and the fig trees breathe with you. Morning arrives like a gentle suggestion, not a command. The light filters through the fig leaves slowly, warming the grove from silver to gold in patches. Somewhere nearby, dew falls from a leaf and lands in the ashes of last night's fire with a soft hiss. You open your eyes and stay still a moment listening. Your companion is already up, crouched by the edge of the stream, washing their hands, their face, their thoughts. They don't say anything when you sit up, stretch, and start packing your bedroll. There's no urgency between you, just the shared knowledge that you'll both ride soon, but maybe not in the same direction. You each have different silences to return to. You finish packing, tighten your satchel, and retrieve your robe from where it had dried overnight. It smells like smoke now, like trees. And you, not like the perfume anymore. And somehow that feels right. You mount your horse quietly and wait until your companion joins you at the path. No goodbyes, not needed, just one final shared breath of the fig-scented air. And then, as if by instinct, you each tug the reins and drift in different directions. They take the river route. You head toward the terraced hills. The roads part like pages turned in parallel books. You ride uphill for a while, toward the ridge you saw yesterday in the distance, curious to see what it looks like from the other side. As you rise, the landscape opens wide again. Terraced fields of tea stretch below, patterned like scalloped jade. Tiny figures move between rows, baskets tied to their backs, laughter floating upward in ribbons. It smells like morning leaves and wet stone, and boiled rice from breakfast pots left uncovered. And as you crest the ridge, a breeze hits your face. And with it, again, impossibly, you smell the perfume. Your perfume, or something like it. It's not your robe, not your sash. You look down, there, far across the next valley, in a hollow between two hills, is a caravan, colourful, slow-moving, probably merchants from the west. One of them, tall, wrapped in dusty orange cloth, adjusts something on their pack animal. You watch them pause, unwrap a bundle. A bottle glints in the sun. You can't smell it from here, not really, but you know. The way a song returns after years. The way a face flashes in a crowd and takes your breath with it. It's not memory anymore, it's recognition. One mainstream historical fact: traders along the Silk Road often carried perfumed cloths as diplomatic tools, gifts not of value, but of message. The scents spoke for them when words couldn't. They told stories of where they'd come from, who they represented, what kind of respect they offered. Scent as a kind of language, a portable dialect of trust. You sit your horse, still for a long time, just watching. Maybe it's the same blend you carried, maybe it's a sibling scent, related by origin, but aged differently. Maybe it's just your mind filling in the gaps. Does it matter? You think about that vial you buried, that cloth now folded in your sleeve, that scroll that no one read. No one read, but that changed a man's face anyway. And you realize it's everywhere now, not because of you, but because you carried it long enough for it to reach others. A quirky legend from the capital: there once was a perfume that could only be smelled by those who had loved someone deeply and lost them. To everyone else it smelled like paper. One official wore it every day for 20 years. No one ever mentioned it. You exhale through your nose and turn your horse eastward. Not back, not forward, just onward. The trail is thinner here, less travelled, but the wind moves through it like it knows where it's going. And the breeze that wraps around your shoulders, that's yours now, your story, your scent. Not perfume, just presence. Felt before spoken, and never entirely gone. The trail narrows into a single path worn by feet, hooves, and time. Ferns creep in close on both sides. Birds dart low between branches overhead, sending ripples of motion through the leaves like murmurs passed along a crowded corridor. You duck beneath a hanging vine, brushing away beads of dew that catch the morning sun like bits of glass. You're alone again, but it's a different kind of alone. Not the kind you felt on your first day out, when the weight of the sealed scrolls pressed against your back and the unfamiliar vial rattled in its silk pouch. This solitude is gentler, fuller. The kind that comes not from being unseen, but from having been seen and carried something worth being remembered by. You reach a low stone outcropping and dismount for a rest. The stone is sun-warmed and flat, and the view from here gives you a glimpse of where you've come from. Valleys folded like paper fans, paths threading through tea fields and fig groves, ridgelines softened by mist. You sit, sip from your water flask, and just exist for a while. The wind comes up again, brushing your collar open slightly, and for a split second, there it is, that same scent. But this time, not from you, from the air itself. From somewhere behind you, you turn, and there, just beginning to crest the ridge, is another figure on horseback. They ride at a deliberate pace, not rushed, not lazy, just sure. And as they approach, the breeze carries more of their scent your way. a low woody note, something resinous like burned pine and dried plum. It blends with what lingers on your own skin. And in that instant you realize the trail has become its own message. You nod in greeting as they near. They return it, wordlessly. Another courier, or perhaps someone who used to be one. You both rest your horses in companionable silence. Eventually, they speak. You carried the peach blend, didn't you? You glance at them.
Didn't think it was still that strong. It's not. They smile faintly. But it was mine once too. That quiets you. You study their face. A little older, perhaps. Weathered, but steady. They said it was used for messages of return, you murmur. They said a lot of things, they reply. What did you use it for? You pause, then answer with simple honesty. To remember who I was becoming. They nod. That's all it needs to be. You share dried fruit, exchange trail water, nothing formal, no handshakes, no credentials, just the mutual understanding that your two stories have brushed edges. And then they reach into their saddlebag and pull out a roll of cloth, unfurl it. Inside, small wax-sealed paper squares, each folded like origami, each scented differently. They hand one to you without explanation. The seal is red.
The paper smells faintly of rosemary and rain. For the next time you don't have words, they say. You tuck it into your bag. You don't ask when to use it, because you'll know. One mainstream historical fact. Tang couriers were sometimes buried with strips of the scents they carried most often, bundled in satchels, tucked beneath robes, or slipped under the tongue. It was believed these aromas would guide their spirits to wherever the stories they once delivered continued. You and the rider part ways at a bend in the trail, no farewells, just a glance and a nod. As you ride on, that paper square in your bag seems to warm slightly, or maybe it's just your own memory reacting to it.
Either way, it feels like why...
Like you've been handed a blank page, one that already knows what you'll write on it before you do. A quirky aside, some Tang poets believed that the scent left behind on a room's beams could reveal more about a person than their autobiography. Wood remembers, one wrote, more faithfully than ink. You pass under a branch. The sun shifts. And suddenly everything feels exactly in place. The path, the scent, the silence, the unfolding. You ride through it all, not as a courier anymore, but as someone who once carried a message, and now knows how to listen for one. The path slopes downward now, winding into a soft valley stitched with willow trees and long stretches of grass swaying like sleeping breath. A small stream loops lazily beside you, moving in wide S-curves as if it's in no rush to arrive anywhere. You follow it for a time, letting your horse drink when it pleases. The hooves leave dark impressions in the wet soil that close up behind you like nothing ever happened. The scent in your clothes is nearly gone now. But that doesn't unsettle you, because it has moved somewhere deeper. Not in the fabric, not even in the air, but in how you move. You realize, slowly, that even your posture has changed. You ride differently now, looser, steadier, less like someone bound by instruction and more like someone shaped by the journey itself. The village you reach just after midday is too small for a gate. Just a handful of homes arranged around a central fig tree with a single tea shop and a weathered sign painted with the characters for quiet fortune. The door creaks as you step inside, and the air inside greets you with warmth, steam, and the earthy fragrance of barley tea. The woman behind the counter doesn't look up right away, just says, "Have a seat. You look like someone who's finally stopped riding for the sake of arrival." You don't respond, just sit, because she's not wrong. She pours a cup of tea and places it on the table without ceremony. Then she pauses, sniffs the air, not obviously, but just enough. "You've come from a message," she says, or perhaps the end of one. You glance at her, surprised. "Can you still smell it?" She smiles. "Not quite, but I recognize the silence it leaves behind." You You sip the tea. It tastes like roasted patience. One mainstream historical fact. Late in the Tang Dynasty, certain tea houses along known courier routes began training their hosts to identify different scents, not for surveillance but for comfort. The idea was that a courier who smelled of sandalwood and tears, for instance, might need a quiet booth and warm soup, while one scented with mint and lacquer might require silence, privacy, and a place to sleep. The hosts weren't paid by the empire, they were trained by each other. You lean back. The woman brings you a cloth-wrapped bundle, not your own, not marked.
Just left here, waiting. You untie the cloth and inside is a pressed square of parchment. No ink, no seal. But the scent barely there is unmistakably familiar, not the original perfume, but a response. It smells like ironwood bark, like calm rain on tile, like memory returned, but with the pain stripped out. Your hands still for a moment. The woman says softly, "Someone wanted you to know. The message was understood, that's all." You nod once, then fold the cloth, not to keep it pristine, but to keep it close. You stay in the village for the night, not out of exhaustion, but out of completion. You tend to your horse, wash your robe, sit by the central fig tree and watch the lanterns flicker like thoughts settling down. You don't speak to anyone else, but they know. They nod to you like one nods to weather that has finally changed. Before bed, the tea shop woman hands you something else, a small sachet, plain cloth, tied in thread.
Faintly warm, you raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. For the road ahead. It doesn't smell like anything yet. You understand instantly. Because the next part of your story hasn't begun, not yet, but it will. And when it does, that sachet will carry the beginning of a new scent. Your scent. A quirky detail preserved in an obscure Tang manual. Couriers were sometimes allowed to craft their own perfumes, not for messages, but for themselves. These personal blends were rarely documented, but were known to linger for generations. Families remembered ancestors not by names, but by the faint traces left in stored robes and carved chests. This, they would say, was the smell of someone who once carried something important. You lie in the guest house bed, sachet resting near your pillow. The fabric doesn't smell like anything yet, but you do. And that will be enough until the next journey calls. The morning arrives wrapped in mist, thick and slow, like a forgotten thought curling through the folds of a dream. You sit on the wooden step of the tea house, lacing your boots in the quiet, the empty village street ghostly in the fog. It's the kind of morning that doesn't ask anything of you, doesn't urge you onward, just offers space. The sachet rests in your lap, still scentless, still waiting. You roll it once between your fingers. The fabric is soft, the thread slightly uneven. Whoever made it by hand, intentionally imperfect, like a vessel that expects to be changed. You tuck it into your sash and mount your horse again, not out of necessity, but instinct. The road pulls gently now, not with urgency, but with invitation. You ride slowly, letting the rhythm find you again, past the fig tree, past the last tiled roof, back into the trees where sunlight begins poking timid fingers through the mist. You hum softly, a tune with no name, something that matches the pace of hooves and heartbeat. You don't have a scroll. You don't have a destination. But you do have something rare, a blank story and the space to begin filling it. And as you ride through this hush-soaked morning, your senses sharpen. Every scent catches you. Mulberry leaves crushed underfoot, rice smoke rising from a cottage far off the road, a whiff of crushed mint where the path curves beside a stream. It's as if the world is offering you a new alphabet, this time made entirely of smell. One mainstream historical fact. In the later Tang period, several elite academies experimented with aromatic literacy, teaching students to interpret meaning through scents the way others read words. The method fell out of favour due to complexity, but a few private tutors preserved the tradition, passing it down in perfume journals that remain untranslated to this day. You imagine one of those journals now and wonder what your own entry would smell like. By midday, you reach a glade of bamboo so tall the sun filters through in stripes. Light, shadow, light, shadow. The air here smells cool, green, a little damp. You dismount and lead your horse by the reins, letting it pick through the grass while you walk barefoot for a while, toes pressing into moss. You untie the sachet, just for a moment. Still no scent, but you whisper to it anyway. Not words, just a breath. You tell it what this feels like, the space after something ends and before the next thing begins, the way silence can be soft instead of empty, the knowledge that you once carried a message that changed no laws, conquered no cities, and still mattered more than most. A quirky little belief held by certain Tang storytellers that every messenger leaves behind an invisible trail, not of footsteps but of atmosphere, a lingering mood. They claimed you could follow a good courier not by looking for dust but by standing still, closing your eyes and noticing the change in how the world feels, like stepping into a memory before it's happened. You keep walking, your feet grow used to the earth again, you let the sachet dangle from your wrist. Maybe it's still blank, or maybe, just maybe, your breath was enough to begin the process. Because when you pass a family of woodcutters on the trail, faces smudged with soot, shoulders heavy with bundles, they pause as you go by. They sniff the air, not suspiciously, not even curiously, just gently, and one of them smiles. You smell like someone who's almost found what they weren't looking for. You smile too, because that's as true a description as you've ever heard. You ride again through a pocket of air thick with flowering vines and old river stones. Somewhere in the hills beyond, a temple bell rings, not to call anyone, just to remind the world it still exists. And as the day stretches on, you no longer wonder where you're going, because for the first time in many, many days, you're not riding to deliver anything. You're just riding to see what you become along the way. The road has become less a route and more a rhythm, something your body now follows without consulting your mind. Hooves against earth, the creak of your saddle, wind brushing through pine. These sounds have become your punctuation marks, the space between what was and what will be. You've stopped measuring distance in li. Now it's measured in moments of scent. A flowering vine you can't name, winding through a ruined gate. The sharp bite of ginger pickles sun-drying on a roof. A faint trail of camphor oil and dust left behind by a merchant's cart. The sachet at your hip still smells of nothing. But now you no longer expect it to. It's not a tool anymore, it's a mirror. A record not of what you carry, but who you are as you carry nothing. You pass through a stretch of road where the trees lean in tightly overhead, branches braiding into shadowy arches. You slow your horse, half expecting to hear a bell or a prayer, or a warning. Instead, you hear something more familiar. Laughter. Not loud, not raucous. Just the kind of low, breathy chuckle that people make when they see something they thought they'd forgotten. You round a bend. There, sitting cross-legged on a stone outcropping, is an old man feeding dried beans to a bird perched on his walking stick. He looks up as you approach, sniffs once, then smiles. Ah, you're the one the scent has been chasing. You blink. You mean the other way around. He shrugs. Depends on the day. You dismount without needing to think about it and sit beside him. The bird hops once and eyes you warily. The man leans in. It's still following you, you know. What is? The message, he says. The one you didn't mean to carry, the one that wasn't in the bottle. You glance down at the sachet, still quiet, still waiting. I thought I already delivered the important one. He nods. You did. But some messages have echoes. You sit in silence for a while. The bird finishes its snack and flutters to a branch above. You sip from your flask. The air smells faintly of coriander, moss, and distant rain. One mainstream historical fact: certain Tang monasteries kept echo scrolls, not copies of edicts or letters, but sensory logs, notes about how the message felt when it arrived, the scent on the parchment, the mood of the courier, even the colour of the sky. These records weren't meant for history. They were kept to train intuition, to teach monks how to feel what was unsaid. The man finally sighs and stands, leaning on his stick. You're close now. To what? He smiles. To yourself. That's what all messages try to deliver in the end. And with that, he ambles off down a side path, birds still watching from above like a silent punctuation mark. You ride again through fields edged with tall reeds that rattle when the wind passes. Each bend in the road feels less like a turn and more like a reveal. The land is opening up around you and within you. You think back to the original vial, the first scent. Peach, blossom, sandalwood, a little smoke. You realize now it was designed to remember something tender, not dramatic, not loud, just something that once mattered and never quite left. You wonder if someone cried when they received it. You wonder if someone didn't need to because the message told them they were already healing. A quirky belief among Tang perfumers that every blend had a shadow scent, something that followed the perfume silently and revealed itself only when the main notes faded. This shadow was said to reflect the soul of the person who carried it, not the one who designed it. You wonder what yours is. You don't reach for the sachet. You don't need to, because as the road lifts toward a hill crowned with wild grasses and quiet stones, the wind shifts. And for the briefest moment, the air around you smells not like perfume, not like plants, not like weather, but like the exact room where you first realized you had changed. And just like that, you understand, you haven't been carrying a message, you've been becoming one. The hill levels out into a wide plateau, ringed by low stones, too evenly placed to be natural, too weathered to be new. You dismount at the edge, letting your horse graze among the wind-stirred grasses, and walk slowly to the center, each step accompanied by the soft hiss of leaves brushing your boots. From here, the world stretches out in all directions, terraced fields to the south, misty forest to the west, and to the north, a narrow ribbon of silver where the river threads between distant mountains. The air is still, like the pause before an important word. And into that silence, a single thought settles. You are no longer waiting for anything. You're not carrying a message. You are the message now, and the scent that once accompanied you like a seal, a sign, a code, is no longer necessary. But still you reach down and untie the sachet. The string comes loose easily. You hold it in both hands, palms open, and lift it to your nose. A breath, then another. Still no scent, but this time your body reacts anyway. You feel recognition in your spine. Something your nose can't name, but your memory does. You know what it means now. It's you, at this moment. No disguise, no role, just presence. You kneel in the grass, sachet still open in your palm, and think about everything this journey has changed. The blind man who read your scent like a letter, the herbalist with vials that whispered to the wind, the boy who said you smelled like importance, the old man who said the message had echoes. They weren't describing a perfume, they were describing a state of being. One mainstream historical fact: in the archives of the Tang Courier office, there exists a fragment of a document, part travel report, part poem. It reads, "I was not the first to carry the scroll, but I was the first to become its meaning." Scholars still argue whether it was meant literally or metaphorically. Maybe it was both. You lie back in the grass and press the sachet against your chest. The sky above you is a wide bowl of blue, pale and streaked with long white clouds like brushstrokes on rice paper. The wind stirs again, and this time the sachet does release a scent, faint, incomplete. But there, It's hard to name. Something like green tea brewed in the morning sun, something like fresh paper, something like memory, before it becomes memory. You don't smile, you just breathe. You close your eyes and listen to your heartbeat. It is steady, it is calm, it is scented now with understanding. A quirky rumor passed between perfumers near the capital. Some believed that if you carried an unscented sachet long enough, it would eventually absorb your own emotional history. And when the time was right, it would exhale it, not to anyone else, but to you, to remind you of who you had become, quietly, on your way to somewhere else. You rise slowly, the sachet now resting lightly in your hand. You tie it back to your sash, not as a tool, not as a keepsake, but as a small truth, a whispered detail, a reminder that sometimes the strongest message is not the one sealed in wax or marked with a name. It's the one no one asked for. The one you only understand after the delivery has been made. You mount your horse again and turn east. The road ahead is soft and sunlit, winding down the far side of the plateau like a ribbon tucked between thoughts. No destination pulls you. No task awaits, but you ride anyway, because the message is still unfolding, and you're still listening. The path eastward threads through bamboo groves so dense the light breaks into flickering coins. Shadows fall in neat stripes across your robe, as if the road itself is counting the moments as you pass. The only sounds are the creak of leather, the quiet breath of your horse, and your own pulse ticking softly in your ears. You've begun to hear it differently now, your heartbeat. Not as pressure, but as rhythm. A quiet drumbeat that keeps time with the story you never meant to tell, but lived anyway. You ride without thinking, not in a trance, not disconnected, but with the kind of presence that comes only when you've shed the need to arrive. And maybe that's the most surprising part of all. You don't need arrival anymore. You've become someone who carries moments, not missions. Meanings, not messages. You pause at a small stone bridge covered in moss and ivy, dismounting to stretch your legs and let your horse drink from the stream below. The water smells cold, mineral, touched with the faint scent of wild ginger growing between the rocks. You breathe it in and remember the very first vial, that first breath, the one that said, "You don't know where this goes, but you're going anyway." You sit on the low wall of the bridge and untie the sachet again. It's warmer now, firmer. You open it, and this time a scent meets you like a familiar voice in a quiet room. It's your scent, not what you used to carry, what you've become. Not flowery, not commanding, but deep, earthy, calm. It smells like polished wood and long roads, like scroll paper that's been touched 100 times and read none, like fig trees at dusk and ink that dried before anyone thought to write. You close the sachet slowly, no need to overbreathe. Some messages are meant to be subtle. One mainstream historical fact: at the close of the Tang Dynasty, as roots grew unstable and wars pulled the empire into fragment and fog, some of the last surviving courier houses began instructing their messengers in a strange new tradition. They were taught not to carry answers, but essences. Instead of a letter, a scent. Instead of instruction, impression. They called them echo runs. And the goal was simple: go where the scent belongs. Let the message find its shape in the space you leave behind. You mount again and continue. The villages grow rarer now. You pass stone shrines broken by time, each one softened by moss and vine, as if nature itself has become the priest. You ride through fields where no one works, but the furrows remain ready to be planted again. You begin to understand why some couriers never returned to the capital, because what is there once you've begun living like a message? What desk can hold the presence of someone who has carried memory across mist? You stop at a hill before twilight and look behind you. The road stretches like a ribbon unraveling from a robe you no longer need. You remove your sash, the one that held your badge, your duty, your vial, and fold it neatly, old. You place it on a flat rock at the crest of the hill, not as an offering, not as a retirement. Just a pause. You tuck the sachet into your sleeve. It has nothing left to prove. A quirky note from a late-period Tang perfumer's journal. We do not design scents to last. We design them to fade faithfully. A good scent does not linger. It becomes a memory that lets you rest. You descend the hill in twilight. The path narrows into a tunnel of brush and birdsong. The crickets begin. A few fireflies rise from the grass like punctuation marks to a sentence you're still writing. You do not light a lantern. You do not need one. The road still knows you, and you no longer ask it where it ends. Night folds in gently, more quilt than curtain, wrapping the landscape in soft layers of quiet. You ride until the path vanishes beneath your horse's hooves, until the sound of the world has narrowed to breath, footstep, and the faint brushing of your sleeve against your side. You dismount in a grove of trees so tall they feel like old thoughts held up by moonlight. You tie your reins loosely, and your horse, as if sensing the mood, doesn't wander far. You sit at the base of a tree with bark as smooth as lacquered scrollwood and listen to the sound of insects orchestrating their quiet symphony. You don't reach for the sachet this time. You don't need to. It's not about checking anymore. It's about trusting that something invisible is still with you. Instead, you rest your hand over the spot where it sits in your sleeve and close your eyes. You think back to the roads behind you, the peach blossom and sandalwood, the scroll no one read, the blind man who inhaled understanding, the herbalist who handed you the ending in a bottle, the second courier, the empty vial beneath the fig tree, the old man feeding a bird who said the message had echoes, and you realize everything has become scent-shaped, even silence, even memory, even you. One mainstream historical fact: the Tang Empire kept a fragrance census, not just for tax purposes, but to track where specific scent ingredients were grown, processed, and traded. They believed scent was a way to map loyalty. If a courtier in the north wore a blend with an herb only grown in the south, it meant something: connection, tribute, sometimes defiance. You lie back in the leaves and wonder, what would your map look like? If someone traced your path, not with ink or charcoal, but with smells, what pattern would emerge? You picture it: circles of warmth, pockets of silence, a trail of scent, fading slowly but surely into selfhood. The wind changes, the moon emerges whole and round, floating in a sky washed pale with starlight. You feel the moment like a small click inside your chest, and then, without ceremony, without resistance, you let go, not of the sachet, not of the past, but of needing to understand it all. Some stories don't ask to be solved, they ask to be held. A quirky note from a forgotten Tang perfume apprentice. When the bottle is empty, the scent returns to the body. This is how the message hides in the skin. You smile in the dark, because now you know why so many couriers never wrote down what they saw, why so many travelled alone, why the most precious messages were the ones that never needed to be spoken. You sleep there, beneath the trees, beside your quiet companion of hooves and breath and grass, and let the night keep watch. And in your sleep you dream no dreams, only scent, a soft one that feels like standing on a hilltop at the end of a long road, not ready to stop, but finally willing to rest. The morning greets you with a hush, like someone drawing open a curtain so gently you don't realize you've been sleeping until the breeze brushes your cheek. You sit up slowly, joints creaking just enough to remind you that bodies, like letters, carry the creases of where they've folded. The light dapples through the tall trees in gold ribbons, touching the moss beneath your palms. You stretch, then press your hand to your sleeve where the sachet rests, soft and silent. You think, this is the first morning in weeks where I don't wonder what I'm meant to deliver, because the answer, finally, is yourself. You saddle your horse without rush. You ride without thought of distance. The trail is quieter than usual, not abandoned, just contemplative, as if even the road is rethinking what it's meant to do. You pass through a thicket of bamboo where the stalks clack together like dry brush, and the sound echoes like 100 soft questions you no longer need answers to. In the distance, bells ring, thin and metallic, not from a temple, but from a travelling weaver's cart, warning foot traffic of its presence. When you pass him, he gives you a nod. He sniffs once, doesn't speak. But as you ride on, you hear him humming a tune you recognize from a village 2 provinces ago. The scent has carried your story forward now. You're no longer the source. You're the trail. You stop at a shallow river by midday. The water is cool and smells of stone and sunlight and something faintly herbal, wild coriander or lemon balm growing along the bank. You dismount, squat low, and cup water to your face. And that's when you see it. Across the water, tied to a reed, is a square of cloth, faded, worn, familiar. You wade over slowly, boots squishing in the silt, and untie it with care. It's not yours, but it smells like someone who once carried the same scent you did, before it was yours. It smells like arrival. You don't take it with you. You simply nod to it and leave your own. You untie your sachet, remove the cloth inside, and knot it gently beside the first. You press the knot once, no words, just presence. One mainstream historical fact: Tang couriers were sometimes instructed to leave no evidence of their passage, no broken seal, no footprint, no signature. But some resisted in their own quiet way. A thumbprint in wax, a twisted thread, a scent folded into bark. It was called ghost ink, proof that something passed through even if the message was gone. You're starting to understand why, because now you don't want people to know who you are. You want them to know someone was here, that a message passed this way once, that it meant something. You ride again, the air warmer now, the sun higher. The trail opens up onto a ridge lined with pine, and the wind carries the faintest scent of distant rain. You pause, look down at the valleys below. Villages not yet visited, homes you'll pass without entering. People who might one day inhale something that reminds them of nothing they can name, but everything they feel. That's what you've become. Not a courier, not a messenger, but a memory in motion, a whisper of something once important that leaves warmth in its absence, a quirky rumour from the old postal houses. If a courier truly fulfilled their journey, they no longer cast shadows. Not because they were ghosts, but because they became part of the light. You breathe in, you breathe out, and for the first time in your long scented journey, you feel complete. Not done, not stopped, just quietly, completely whole. The ridge gives way to a long, slow descent, one of those rare roads where you barely need to guide your horse. It steps carefully, automatically, as if it too senses that this is a road meant for remembering, not rushing. As you move lower, the trees shift from pine to birch to old plum orchards long past their fruiting. Their twisted limbs arch overhead like old dancers frozen mid-bow, and in their shade you pass through quiet, so total it feels carved. The sachet now swings lightly from your sash, not hidden, not pressed close, but worn like an ornament. The scent has settled, not strong, not dramatic, but undeniably yours. It trails behind you in a thread, so faint that only the wind seems to notice. You don't mind, because this scent wasn't made to persuade or impress. It was made to stay, to remind. You stop by a small rest house with a thatched roof half sunken into the hillside. There's no innkeeper, just a low table, a water urn, and a reed mat that's been swept recently enough to know someone cares about it. You take off your boots, stretch your legs, lean back against the wall, and rest your eyes. Someone's left a note pinned to the post above the water jar. The paper is plain. No seal. But it smells faintly of smoked plum and old ink. You read it. To the next one who passes through, if the scent has found you, then so has the story. Drink, rest, and leave behind only stillness. You smile, because this message wasn't meant to arrive, it was meant to wait. One mainstream historical fact: scholars of Tang postal routes discovered that some rest stations were left intentionally unsupervised, not because they were abandoned, but because they were offered. These spots became known as silent platforms, places where a courier could recover not just physically but spiritually, a place where no more carrying was required. You pour water into a shallow cup and sip slowly. It tastes like slate and sun. You let your body stretch, your shoulders fall into gravity, your breath deepen. Then you write a note of your own. You fold it, no seal, no signature, but you press it lightly to your sachet before placing it under the mat, so it carries that faint trace of scent that now belongs only to you. You whisper as you stand, "Let this story help the next one begin." Then you step back onto the road. You pass terraced fields again, this time full of workers singing softly to one another across the green. Their hands move in practiced motion. Their laughter rises and falls in rhythm with the water channels trickling down the slopes. One of them pauses as you ride by. They sniff, smile, then go back to their work. They don't call out, they don't need to. You've been recognized, not by name, not by face, by feeling, by fragrance. A quirky belief from late Tang mountain monks. They claimed that people who carried certain messages left traces in the soil that only butterflies could read. Entire fields of flowers were said to bloom in response to one person's passing, years after their journey ended. These were called scent echoes, and were never planted by hand. You ride toward the final hills as the light softens. Not setting, just exhaling. And in that golden hour hush, you feel it again, that you are no longer part of the journey. You are the journey. You are what people will one day pause in the road to remember, even if they don't know why. The final hills rise not like obstacles, but like punctuation, soft mounds with tall grass that ripples in long waves, as if the land itself is breathing. You ride slowly, your horse taking its time, hooves muffled by the velvet of the earth beneath. The path is faint now, less a road, more a memory. And that's fitting, because by now you understand that some journeys don't need markers, they just need movement. At the crest of the hill you pause. The horizon stretches vast and pale ahead, the sky blooming with the pinks and golds of a day ready to loosen its hold. And below, nestled in a bowl of cypress and stone, is a building, not large, not grand, but unmistakably waiting. It's shaped like an old message box, long, low-roofed with rounded eaves and a circular window cut into the front wall. You guide your horse down the hill, the grasses brushing your knees, the scent of clover and cedar rising around you. At the building's entrance, a paper lantern swings gently in the breeze, though there's no flame inside. You dismount, tying your reins loosely. You don't knock, you just step inside. The air inside is cool and dry, and still, not abandoned, just held in pause. A narrow wooden bench lines the back wall. A single cushion sits in the center, and on it, a folded cloth bundle. You sit, not to rest your body, but to acknowledge, because you've seen this before, early in your travels, in a forgotten archive near Luoyang, a record of a message house where scent couriers left behind their final blends, not for reuse, not for analysis, but for quietness, to let the scent finish speaking. You unwrap the cloth slowly. Inside is another sachet. This one is sealed with wax. Your symbol, somehow, pressed into the seal you never made. And beside it, a small strip of parchment that reads in careful brush strokes. The message arrived. The silence remained. Thank you. You don't cry, you don't smile, you simply close your eyes, because it's enough. You unwrap your own sachet. Place it beside the one left for you. Two halves of the same moment. And then you sit there, in that room of wood and whisper, and do nothing for a very long time. One mainstream historical fact. It was believed that when a scent courier completed their final route, their last stop wasn't recorded in any register. Instead, they were remembered only through the persistence of what they left behind, scents, notes, silences that hung in the air for months. Entire buildings were said to carry that energy, and travelers who passed through them felt suddenly soothed, even if they didn't know why. A quirky aside recorded by a Tang archivist The couriers who leave no name leave the strongest mark, for their scent is not in bottles, but in the air we breathe when we rest. You stay until the light outside turns silver. You do not sleep, but you do close. Not a chapter, not a story, but a loop. You stand and walk outside into the night. The road does not continue here, but your journey does, because even now, even with nothing in your hand, you are still carrying something. The shape of a scent, the echo of silence, the memory of meaning, and it is enough. You don't leave the final message house with ceremony. You simply walk forward, each step gentle against the earth, each breath steady, each motion its own quiet punctuation. The road no longer winds beneath you, it unfolds, not as a demand, not as a mystery, but as something long known, just now remembered. The wind moves ahead of you, not behind, as if it too has turned to lead the way. And for the first time since the first scroll was placed in your hand, you realize there is no more delivery, there is only arrival repeated gently in each place your presence reaches. You move through a narrow corridor of cypress trees, their trunks tall and narrow, rising like the spines of unwritten books. They sway slightly in the evening breeze, making a soft creaking sound like wooden drawers opening or secrets slowly stretching awake. The sachet at your side is lighter now. Its scent, once mysterious, then meaningful, has gone soft, like steam from a forgotten teacup, not gone, just settled. It no longer introduces you to the world. It now simply exists beside you, like breath, like shadow, like the final line of a song. At the edge of the trees, a child sits with her back against a rock, sketching in the dirt with a stick. She looks up as you approach, not startled, not afraid. She sniffs the air, then smiles. You smell like peace. You don't answer. You just bow your head once in thanks, because what more is there to say? You pass her by, letting your presence remain like a footnote the wind will carry back. Down the hill the valley is blooming, not with flowers, but with stillness. You can feel it, the way your scent has softened the air. The way the path behind you no longer asks to be followed, but simply noticed. One final mainstream historical fact. After the fall of the Tang, many of its roads were repurposed, overgrown, or forgotten. But certain sites, old courier rest stops, scent houses, stone markers rubbed smooth, still retained something strange. Travellers reported calmness, gentle dreams, the feeling that someone had once passed through and left a comfort behind. The government dismissed it, but the people remembered. A final quirky tale. One wandering monk once claimed that all couriers, when they die, become part of the wind. Not ghosts, not stories, just a warmth that moves ahead of others, leaving behind the scent of comfort, quietness, and the courage to continue. You reach the final ridge, and you do not stop, because there is no stopping. Not for someone who has become the message. Not for someone whose footsteps no longer carry burden but invitation. To rest, to begin, to breathe, to listen. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. And now you feel the softness settle in. The breath slows, the edges of the story curl inward like paper, warmed by candlelight. Your body sinks deeper into stillness, and the scents of the road fade. First the fig trees, then the sandalwood, then the faint memory of peach blossom you didn't even know was still clinging to you. You don't need to carry anything now, not the vial, not the sachet, not the questions. The journey is complete, not because you reached a place, but because you became one. Let the road behind you soften into mist. Let the wind that once carried your scent now wrap you like a blanket. There is nothing left to deliver. You've given all that needed to be given. And now the only task is to rest. Let your heartbeat slow, like footsteps easing into silence. Let your breath deepen, like twilight settling into the corners of the room. You are still. You are safe. You are scented with memory and wrapped in quiet. And somewhere, in a valley you may never see again, a fig tree sways in the evening breeze, carrying with it the softest echo of you, a message well-travelled, a presence well felt, and a night well earned. Sleep now, you've arrived.